We are grateful to have our guest who's actually with us today. He's actually a North Korean refugee, and he has actually escaped North Korea twice, okay? And he's going to be sharing his story with us today. He is a North Korean advocacy intern at Liberty in North Korea, also called Link. Help me welcome Charles Ryu.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here today, because it's my honor to be here, and I really appreciate that. You want to bring these issues and listen about it, and do something about it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're grateful that you're here. Well, Charles, you did escape North Korea 2 times.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about the first time.
Yeah, so actually, it was kind of easier for me because I actually born October 1st, 1994, under Chinese father and North Korean mother. Yeah, but when I was 5, my father abandons me and my mother, and he left to China, and he never returned. And I lost my mother 6 years later from starvation. Yeah, and from then on, I had to figure out, how to live alone, begging for food from the strangers in the street, and battling starvation and freezing winter cold. But I ended up living with my aunt until my father sent my stepbrother to rescue me and take me into China. So I arrived at China in 2008 when I was 14. Yeah, and don't even ask. Life in China was great because I was being homeless, living with my aunt and begging for food in North Korea, but 2008 China wasn't, that compared to now, it wasn't that great. But for me, it was like, like heaven, because at least I didn't have to beg for a place to sleep overnight, and and didn't have to beg for food. Overall, it was really, the freedom that I had, it was really great.
Yeah.
But the happiness that I felt in China was only temporary because Chinese government didn't recognize North Koreans as refugee, and they deported me back to North Korea. Yeah, and because they have a special relationship and with North Korea and China, and I've never thought of getting caught and deported back to North Korea because my father is Chinese, and like, wait, my father is Chinese, like who's gonna capture me and deport me back, But I got captured, deported back, and I remember the day I lost all hope. And I was in the back of a Chinese police truck, chained to a couple of other North Koreans. And we turned that corner, and I could see North Korean border in the distance. And for 2 weeks, I have been kept in a Chinese jail, waiting to be sent back to North Korea. And I was so terrified of being punished for leaving my country. And I was so sure that I'll be in big trouble as soon as I step back into North Korea.
Right.
And the truck wrote us stop at the border, and the guards were screaming at us to get off.
Well, going back into North Korea, I think you told me earlier that you got put into a labor camp. Can you tell us about what that was like for you and what that meant?
Yeah, of course. So, so the North Korean government wanted me to confess that I was trying to defect to South Korea. But the truth was, I went to China to find my father. I had no desire to defect to South Korea and beg him to understand. But after beating, I didn't confess. After beating me for like weeks, they sent me to a labor camp. And I was told that I'll only be there for a couple of weeks because I was so young. I was only 15. And experience in labor camp. Most American 15 years old are sophomore in high school. Their lives are full of hanging out with their friends, driving, taking drivers at classes, and going to sports practices, right?
Yeah.
But at 15, I was in labor camp, working 12 hours every day. And I was afraid of, I was so terrified of being beaten again. So I worked really hard for the first couple of weeks. And months passed, and I was not released. In the labor camp, I was only allowed to eat 150 kernels of corn a day.
150
kernels of corn a day. And I soon began to lose weight, and I could see my rib cage. And one morning, we were marching in our roast, our work site, and I saw a dry vomit on the road.
Dried vomit?
Yeah, dried vomit.
Wow.
And I was so hungry that I got on my hands and knees and began picking the rice out of the vomited rice.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't stop eating the vomited rice until the beating from the guards were too unbearable. And at night, the guards would storm into our cells and force us to recite the rules of the camp. And there are like many rules, and we had to memorize them. And if you misquoted even one rule, they will force you to stand all night until the work began the next morning.
Wow.
And it was on one of those sleepless nights that I vowed I will not die here, and I'll escape North Korea again. And 8 months later, I was finally released because I could not even stand up or even lift my arm.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had lost so much weight that I was a worthless worker, and they sent me back to my stepbrother's house.
Wow. So tell us about what it was like at your stepbrother's house then, and how did you learn to live not in a labor camp? What was it like for you in a different situation?
Yeah, so after spending weeks and months trying to regain my strength because I was malnourished, and after spending weeks and months trying to regain my strength, I needed to find a job, and I could not rely on my stepbrother to take care of me, because he had his own family, and in North Korea it's really hard to take care of someone that like not that important, or like because of the food situation, right?
Right.
And starvations. Yeah, so I had to find a job. So I ended up working in a coal mine where I was paid only in rice. And 6 days a week, we went to the cold, damp tunnels of the mine. And most of the other boys that work in the mine were my age. So we would push 1,000 pounds turquoise cart miles into the mine.
Yeah.
And then crawl down the smaller tunnels with empty sacks and only return once they're full. And cave-ins are common, and I saw other boys lose their arms and legs as they're smashed into the rocks.
Wow. In the coal mines?
In the coal mines, yeah.
Wow.
And I watched my friend die when the coal cart fell off the track and crushed him. Yeah. So I worked in a mine about a year, and I realized it was my time to try to escape North Korea again, because I knew how hard escaping North Korea would be,
Right.
without any money or food, or travel documents, because in North Korea there is no freedom of travel. There are checkpoints on all major roads, and you have to have enough money to bribe a guard or either get the travel documents from the government in order to travel.
Right.
And I knew, because I didn't have any of that, and also I knew that if I was caught, I could be killed, but those risks overweighted working in the dark coal mine every day until it was my turn to lose a limb or die.
Okay, so tell us about escaping for the second time. How did that happen, and what did you do?
Oh yeah, so one morning I stole 5 flashlights from the mine, from the owner of the coal mine, and instead of going to work, I walked off the path and began running. And I sold those 5 flashlights at an illegal market. It's aka 장마당, so it's like a market in North Korea. And I used the money to buy food. And I spent the next 3 months hiding from the police and waiting for my opportunity to travel to the border. Yeah, so as I mentioned, there is no freedom of travel in North Korea. On a humid day in August, I was lying down on a hillside, and in the distance, I saw a train come to stop, and passengers exited the train cars. And I approached the train cars, and I realized the train was going to the border. And I thought, this is my chance, And as the passengers boarded again, I joined the line. And the guards would ask more papers and travel documents. And I lied that my mother had them and that she was already on the train. And the guard nodded, and I headed straight for the train bathroom to hide. And also I spent the next 2 days hiding from the police, and sometimes I have to climb out of the window and hide on the top of the train, or sit on the hitch between the 2 cars to avoid the guards. And if I was caught again, I'll be handed over to the police and most likely to end up in a labor camp. And I was almost the border town, maybe halfway there, when the hands of a guard grabbed the back of my neck and dragged me to a holding cell on the train. And there were already 2 other boys in the room who had been caught too. And as the guard locked the door to the cell, he told us that we would be handed over to the police at the next stop. And I thought about how terrible the labor camp had been. The long days of manual labor, and the sleepless night that I spent memorizing the rules, and the constant feelings of hunger. And I refused to let that happen again. As the train began to slow down for the next stop, I began to panic. And I saw a window was unlocked, so I pushed it open and squeezed out of the small openings.
Wow.
And I jumped off the moving train, rolled into a ditch, and began sprinting for some nearby trees. And I walked for hours, illegally boarded a second train, and 2 days later, I finally made it to the border town. I remember feeling excitement and happiness when I reached the border town because, I thought I couldn't make that far, but I made it. But at the same time, I was really terrified because, I still had to cross Yellow River.
Right.
So I walked into a river divides North Korea and China and hid in the grass until the darkness. And when I finally thought it was safe, I quietly waded into the water. And in the middle of the river, I slipped on a rock and I let out a scream. And immediately I felt like flashlight was on my back, and I heard a guard screaming at me. And he said that he would shoot me if I didn't turn back. But I was dead either way. Either he would shoot me or I would obey and return to the shore, only to be shipped off to labor camp. And I decided not to turn back, and I kept wading ahead. The guards kept screaming at me, but he never pulled the trigger. And each step took me further away from North Korea and dream of my freedom, China. And 5 minutes later, I was dripping wet, but finally back in China. And I walked for 3 days. I don't know where I'm going. The only hope that I had is like finding, a town, and just find the water, find the bread, and just eat, right? And I walked for 3 days, and I didn't have water. I was dehydrated. I was like hungry, and I was exhausted.
Right.
And I walked on for 3 days, and one man found me collapsed in the middle of a road. And when he realized that I was from North Korea, he helped me connect with the people who helped me finally come to the United States, which is, I went to Southeast Asia first, and then I came to the United States.
Yeah, tell us about what it's been like for you in the United States and how that's been for you.
Yeah, I remember looking out the window as the plane began to land in California. I never even dreamed of being on a plane or even coming to America. And as I stepped off the plane, I felt this strange feeling that I've never known before. Safety. I was finally safe and didn't need to hide anymore. I came to America 5 years ago. Almost 6 years ago. In the time, I have learned English, graduated from high school, and worked as many different jobs. Like, for example, like Uber, Lyft, Panda Express, sushi chef, driving instructor, and finally, with the help of Link, which is Liberty in North Korea, NGO that helps North Korean refugees to escape China. With their help, I enrolled in a course at a coding dojo, which is like a coding bootcamp, where I learned how to code and build a website. And now I am interning at Liberty in North Korea as an advocacy intern. And my life in America has not been easy. But this is land of opportunity. And I know that if I work hard, I can achieve my dreams.
Great. Let me ask you one last question.
Okay.
How have you seen God at work in your life through all of this?
Today, I stand there as the exception. For every story about a North Korean like mine, thousands of others end in tragedy. Sometimes I wonder, why was it me? Why me? Why was I the one that survived in a labor camp when my cellmate starved to death? And why did the coal cart fell off the other side of the rails, crushing my friend instead of me? And why did I get a chance to jump off the train and those two older boys didn't? And I struggled with those questions for a long time. And the small gift that I can give to those that are not here today is to share my story. To know that there are many more people with the dreams and hopes and desire of a better life.
Great. We are going to answer a few questions, Charles. Their questions are always really good, just so you know. Okay, here we go. Here's our first question. When did you first hear about Christ?
That would be in 2008. So when I first time escaped from North Korea, so I was with my father for 9 months. During that time, South Korean pastor came to our house, and he gave me 100 yen in Chinese, and then he gave me a Bible, and he also gave me a cross, and he kind of prayed for me, and at the time, I didn't really know, because I, grew up in a place where there's no, churches, or believers, so I didn't know what was at that time. But actually that was when I first heard about Christ in 2008. Yeah.
Tell us more about that. How did you come to know Christ personally, and what was that like for you?
Yeah. So I've been through a lot, and despite my sadness, struggles, starvations, I feel like God has been always with me, and I feel like He has purpose for me, and He could maybe use me as His tool, right? Because there was a lot of times that I almost died, but also I believe that when the man that stopped in the middle of the jungle, what is he doing out of nowhere, and he stopped and he carried me to his house, and gave me food and shelter, and the next morning he connected me to a South Korean pastor. I'm not sure if he was a pastor or a missionary, but and then he finally helped me to come to the United States, right? So if I see through that, and even at the labor camp, and I knew a little bit of Christ, and when you desire, I was devastated, to God. So at night I would just kneel down and cry and just pray to God, please help me, and also during the time when I walked for 3 days, and I also at the end, my feet got blisters and it started bleeding, and my shoe fell apart, and I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, this is it, and I just kneeled down and waiting to die, and I cried for help, for God, and I guess He heard me.
Yeah,
and,
great.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another question. Can you explain more about what your current job is now? What is your position? Are you still living in the United States?
So my current position is advocacy intern at Liberty in North Korea. And yes, I am a permanent resident and I have a green card, and I will become citizen pretty soon. Yeah.
Oh. Here's another question. Can you elaborate on the work Link does? How can we support your efforts?
Yeah, so I just don't want you guys to have misconception of what Link does. Link actually doesn't smuggle people from United States to North Korea. Okay, so we don't go actually into North Korea, smuggle people out.
Right.
What we do is we work with trusted partners in China and Southeast Asia, and we contact them, and we bring out North Korean refugees out of North Korea, out of China through Southeast Asia, and we give them a brief orientation about like what's life in United States and what is life in South Korea. So they have option to choose either one. So majority of North Korean refugees goes to South Korea because they speak the same language, and also the culture is pretty similar. But those ones who come to United States, they already have family in the States, or either they're really curious about what's like to be in America. Yeah. How can you get involved? So there's many different ways. I know that you guys are in college. I'm sure there's no high school students here. right? Okay, good. So you guys can start, rescue team here, right? And just start a fundraising page. Become a donor. $5, $10, it doesn't matter. You can save another North Korean like Charles, or you can become a one-time donor, or even you guys can come intern with us. Intern with me. I'm interning now. Maybe like fall semester, because I'm currently in spring. But you guys can come intern during the fall. I might, stay, extend my internship, because I like, what I do, So so that's the way that you guys can get involved. Yeah.
Great. Link's a great organization.
Yeah, they are.
All right, here's another question. Do North Koreans know what life is like outside of North Korea?
Yeah. So actually, that question, like, it's like many different ways of answering that question, because people that are nowadays they have a lot of foreign media access to North Korea, right? So a lot of people knows what life is like outside. For example, like when I was in North Korea, I watched a lot of foreign media when I was living with my stepbrother when I was like 13, 14. The first movie that I watched was like 007.
Yeah, James Bond.
Yeah, James Bond.
Yeah.
And the second movie, because like I still can remember the first day that I watched that movie, because it was like mind blowing, because like for me, like, hey, we don't even have a food to eat, but they're using supercars, super guns, like what is going on, right?
Everyone's like that in Europe and stuff.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And so like I had like kind of exposure to like foreign culture, So like I knew, and also like it's gotta be like with a cool group of people. If you want to hang out with like cool, kids, then you have to know a little bit of foreign culture so that you guys have something to talk about, right? Yeah. So that question is yes, but they do. They have a lot of information about outside of North Korea, but they're just too afraid to to say something, because like they have like collective punishment that you can get from government. So yeah, the collective punishment would be like your entire family and 3 generations would be ending up ends up in a political labor camp, where you will never get out. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Here's another question. Are there North Koreans that are Christians who are living there?
I'm not 100% sure, but I heard some stories. There is underground church, and there is like a political labor camp, like size of LA. I'm sorry, not LA, but like really big, the political labor camp. And there's a lot of Christians, because North Korea, they only believes in Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il, right? So they don't believe any other gods. So so I heard that there is underground church Christians, but me personally, I've never met them before in North Korea, and I've never seen Bible in North Korea. Yeah. So.
Great. Here's another question. How has your experience been with the Korean and Korean American community here in the U.S.? I'm nice, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very nice. Okay. Yeah, I'm very nice, and they're really fun. Fun to hang out with. And like one story that I want to share was so when I first came to the state, I have been in Southeast Asia for like 9 months, 8 months, and I was craving Korean food, right? And like. In my thought, when I come to the state, like there would be like all white people, like there would be no Korean, no Asian, and like the textbook that Southeast Asia they gave me was like typical, like American, like they only presents they present like multiple diverse, but like for some reason there wasn't any Asians, so I was like, okay, so
representation matters.
Yeah, representation matters. Yeah, so I was like, oh my god, what am I gonna do, And I was craving kimchi so bad, and then I went to I got to United States, and I went to my foster parents' home, and like, are you craving any Korean food? I was like, yes, please, And then we went to Korean restaurant, and I ate kimchi, and like the lady that looked at me like, wait, what? Are you eating like food or just kimchi? So yeah, so I feel like Korean community is like still my home, because we are just same people, and we're brothers and sisters, but just a little bit of cultural differences, and different language dialogue, you know. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
No
Here's
problem.
another question. How has your healing process been? Did you ever lose your faith or stop believing God was real in the midst of your struggle?
You know, sometimes it's you know, I had a PTS, you know, and it was and you know, I had hard times, you know, like and finding out myself. The greatest challenge that I faced here was, you know, finding my identity, right? Identity, because I know how to survive, you know, and I know how, you know, how to beg food. You know, I almost gave up my everything, right? I gave up my personality, human dignity, and you know, but I know how to survive. But when I got here, you know, it was kind of tough, you know, because I just don't know what's freedom, you know, like I didn't know. So, you know, I had a hard time, but, you know, only thing that, you know, like kept me going was like my ambition, you know, and I know God has planned for me, you know, and most of the time when I, you know, struggle with, you know, my school and my work, you know, and I thought about why I'm here, you know, and that motivated me, you know, ambition, you know, and that also, you know, kept me alive, you know, it's like the purpose, yeah. So I mean, my healing was now I'm fine. Now I'm, you know, within, and I continue to get to know Christ. You know, I don't know Christ like 100%, but you know, I really hope to get to know Him, and yeah.
Great, thank you. Well,
No problem.
Charles, you know, as we end, we're going to ask a question, and the question is, what were meaningful in your journey? What was meaningful about who God was and how He showed up for you in your journey?
Through my journey, you know, as I mentioned, you know, I feel like God has always been with me, you know, and also my mom, you know, always watch out for me, you know, next to God, you know, and you know, because of that, you know, I don't want my experience, you know, and I don't want, you know, want it to go away, you know, I want to keep my struggles, you know, and think about, use that as a motivation, you know, to keep going, you know. So without my journey, without my struggles, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be who I am, right? So I feel like that's my, you know, identity, you know, but not in a bad way, you know, but really, you know, I want to use that as my motivation to keep going.
Great. Yeah. All right. Hey, help me thank Charles for sharing his story with us today.
Biola University prepares Christians to think biblically about everything, from science to business to education and the arts. Learn more at biola.edu.